photography seemed a natural way to address what was happening to me. The issue from the start was one of how to use the camera as a witness to personal transition at a basic level, to explore if I could become convincing as a female, at least for a fraction of a second of exposure time, and to find validation through the eye of a lens of a camera. To have proof that this side of me existed, even if hidden from everybody else in the world. Photography offers that to transvestites. At first, I was montage self-portraits into newly urbanised landscapes of American new topographic photographers, particularly Lewis Boltz, who had visited Nottingham when I was a student there in the early 80s. Then I began taking my own location shots and continuing from there. A key question for me was how to use photography to be visible, but wishing to remain hidden and unidentifiable, which has required a variety of strategies, of which this landscape as metaphor is one, and self-portraiture another. I sometimes think of myself as hiding, but right in front of the lens, using simple methods such as turning my face away, or by having my back to a camera, or by cropping in close on the body, or by blurring focus, moving during exposure, silhouetting against the light, and adopting objectification as a means of identification. My parents grew up on very small subsistence farms of a few acres in rural Ireland. In their 20s they moved to England to find employment. My dad worked on building sites and also digging trenches to lay gas mains. So their relationships to land indirectly informs this work. The movement from rural life to an urban one, and fields and woodlands being excavated and developed, raise issues of migration and transformation, all personal and relevant to what I do and who I am and have become. My trans landscapes are one way I found of saying something discreetly about something I mostly still feel a need to remain secretive about. Though that sense of shame is getting a little bit less with time, and being inappropriately named on certain states and also in this show, has been an important part of accepting myself. So thank you for that. In provincial towns and cities like where I live, a lot of people know it's safer to keep their secrets secret. On a telly programme a few years ago, Grace and Perry accused trannies of letting our own fear hold us back and told us to stop anticipating problems with people and just get out there and be yourself. Like with most things, he was right. But if I get killed, I'm definitely blaming him. That's what I said. That first experience was just the words came out from nowhere, free at last. But this visually is what it, I think Tim Robbins in Shawshank Redemption, as he's just escaped from prison, this liberation is pretty much what it felt like. It's just so unexpected. And this last piece is about a positive story about how family can accept someone who's in the family
was, I think I was oblivious
does have
to the whole notion
transgender
altogether.
as
I
their
just
choice.
wasn't really picking up on
From a very
things
young
other
age.
than I saw her playing with things that were notoriously something that a girl would play with. It was probably a denial of my ability to accept the general notion that a child could be transgender. I was not ready to allow Jazz to run around outside dressed as a girl. Happy birthday! After I got past that and the resistance, I came to truly believe that her true essence was that she was a girl, and that I had to get past any preconceived notion of what I had about things and just support her and love her.
Make a wish! Yay!
It was a princess costume, and it was actually Dad's night at the preschool, and there were all the proud dads, and they were with their children, either boy or girl, and their boys were in Power Ranger outfits or Ninja Turtles or whatever, and all the girls were in princess dresses, and Jazz was in a princess dress.
He handled himself so beautifully, but I know inside it was really hard for him, but you would have never known.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the key points in time as it related to Jazz transitioning.
I have to toot your horn because how many men out there would be like, I'm okay if my son is wearing a dress and likes girly things and is walking around the house with lipstick, makeup, hair and bows, which is one of the reasons I love him. He's just, he's great.
Just had one personal experience at the end of that, is that somebody I work with, her son wants to be like a girl at school all the time. His mom accepted that, but his dad didn't. And they divorced last year, and I think that was one of the key issues of how to handle that issue of when a small child makes a preference that's not what they're supposed to be. So that's a positive story, but it's not always that easy an outcome. But Richard, if I could have a hug at this point. Thank you for putting it on. The whole show was a photograph as a secret about a secret. Artist was really good at quotes as well as photography. Though she did used to, in her correspondence, refer to transvestites that she photographed. Transgender is a kind of trespassing identity. It's only been part of my life and who I am for about the last 10 years. And it came totally out of the blue before that. It was just something I never even conceived of would be part of who I was. But the time it became part of my life, it was like an epiphany. And it was something really beautiful and exciting and liberating. And there's some little video clips later that tried to show something of that exhilaration. But it was also felt like being somewhere forbidden, and this idea of trespassing. And I also felt that there's going to be a price to pay for it, and that could be mental illness, and it is regarded as a mental illness in America still. France has recently no longer regards it as such. Also expected that if I told anybody, they'd reject me immediately. One or two people did when I eventually did tell them. And that possibility was I'd end up killed or commit suicide, and there are statistics to show that it's statistically far more likely. So it's a brilliant experience, and it was also terrifying. Now, it's part of the fear of failing to conform to what norms of behaviour we're all expected to comply with. So I kept it secret for several years, like most people do in that situation, I think. The three things I'd like to say about the locations I go to take pictures. They're almost always local to where I live and grew up, and that seems important somehow. They are construction or demolition sites, signifiers of masculinity, but undergoing radical transformation, usually from something perceived as being in a natural state to something constructed, like much of gender identity. And I realised I needed to trespass onto these sites to take pictures. Permission was only rarely forthcoming anyway. But to encroach on what is seen as territory of another's gender is also to trespass. There's risk involved with trespassing. The anxiety of breaching a fence and evading security on these sites is remarkably similar to the experience of putting on a dress and going out into public space.
Sexuality, I think, confuses people, and it's confused me in the past.
Well, the statistics are out there on that, Richard.
Yeah, and
The majority of transgender people are heterosexual,
yeah,
or bisexual.
yeah,
Just because you wear a dress doesn't mean you think of yourself, your sexuality is necessarily homosexual. A lot of transvestite people call themselves lesbian.
yeah. I've learned that since, but I think there's a message out there that's not getting across that
Yeah.
gender is completely separate to
Yeah,
sexuality.
but I don't think that's why do you have to go around telling everyone what sexuality
No,
is?
exactly.
It's
Yeah.
like saying, "Oh, don't think I'm gay," as if that
No,
is something to worry
but
about.
there's a difference between coming out with sexuality, but with gender there seems to be the issue of passing.
Yeah.
And are you involved in that idea?
Well,
The idea of passing, is that something that it's not about coming out, it's about
well, how,
being seen to be the
I don't
person
go
you
out
are?
in a dress very often because I'm too scared of being hassled. But in London, I've been out a few times, and you do occasionally meet people who are totally convincing. I can't achieve that. They've spent their life since a child making sure that every aspect of them can be changed to be feminised, and you could be talking to them and you just don't know. This beautiful woman. Passing is something that I used to think, could I achieve that? But I think the amount of resources you have to put into that in your life are colossal to get to that point. Particularly someone we met once, Marissa, and her life was perfect. She'd become the person she wanted to be, but her girlfriend wanted nothing to do with that aspect of the fundamental aspect, but she couldn't accept it. And you could tell there was this huge hole where they just wanted to be accepted and seen that way and still be loved as a man would want to be loved, but seen as a woman. The funny thing about transvestism and transgender and being, I imagine, gay, is that even if you sort of have a small group of friends that you open up to, you don't walk around holding hands with your boyfriend or kissing in public. It's like there's a certain level of acceptance, but we don't go beyond sort of, we don't want to push it, because society, like times I've walked around in London, people will spit, they'll see you and spit, but not at you, but like on the ground as a reflex, just to express their disgust, not being a proper male, as if you're somehow an insult to manhood or something like that. But part of trying to be me is also feeling like maybe in 50 years' time it won't be an issue. Whatever you want to wear, male or female, nobody's going to think that's an issue. What's the problem? You want to wear a dress or a suit, why is it such an issue? People think you're a freak or weirdo. I think women fought the battle a long time ago about clothing and what they could wear. George Sand wearing trousers, at the time she was regarded as provocative, but she stood her ground and said, no, I can wear what I want to wear.
Is that where the pressure, the idea of suicide and mental health, does it come from the pressure to be yourself in society?
I think it's the pressure of maintaining an illusion of being the proper fit for your gender and knowing that isn't you. But you see, life's easier that way, but it's a price to pay for repressing that. A lot of people, when they start out in transgender, will buy a dress or something and wear it and feel a release, but feel such shame and fear that they usually end up throwing the clothes away, having to buy them again when the need comes back again, which it always does. Someone told me that early on, because on the web there's quite some good community groups, people talk about things. If it's, like, as I said, it was out of the blue for me, but someone said it won't go away now. It's like you've taken the lid off this box. And it was like opening a door, something, why is that suddenly important to me? And there's this exhilaration of not having to be that person that you're told to be, and you realise it's a whole set of limitations that it makes life easier to accept. But if you're going to be yourself, sometimes you're not going to necessarily comply with those. And then it's an uncomfortable place, and you have to try and find the courage and self-confidence, which I don't have much of, just sometimes be yourself, and that's liberating, and that's one's own personal battle. So I think I've answered that question in a roundabout way, Richard.
You did.
Richard, something a bit personal. How has it affected your romantic life? I may ask?
Mostly, you would have to pick your moment. Imagine you were on a date, if you're a woman, on a date with a guy. At what point would you expect him to tell you? If you said it in 5 minutes, it'd probably be wee. You're dumping something really heavy on me. That might not have been an issue a little bit later, but if you leave it too late, then you feel like, I've got feelings for you now you're telling me this. So I think it's a tightrope. I think it's like if you were on a date with a woman, and the first thing she says is 10 minutes in the conversation, I'm thinking maybe 2 kids. It could be too soon to talk about it. So, but I don't think women are looking for guys in frocks. There isn't a huge demand.
Which really, there's a lot more open-mindedness as well, one would hope, at the same time.
I think if someone's got to know you just as the regular guy, and they have feelings for you anyway, then it probably won't be enough to put them off. If you keep it a secret, they don't want to deal with the mockery that you will get. And people at work, when they discuss anybody they've met who's transsexual, I know what ridicule that they're the target of.
Sure.
Behind their backs. It's just a human nature to have a good laugh at something like that. And the guy in a frock is either inherently funny or as Hitchcock found, inherently scary? Thank you for the question.
I think transvestites are, for me, they celebrate femininity more than I think being a woman can be. Because I find, personally, I just find like, you look at all these magazines, like you're wearing a beautiful dress and you've got heels and stuff, and I would find those heels to be like modern day, like it would cripple me to have to wear them on the street. And it's just like, and it's just all these fancy dresses, and that's just an extra layer for being a woman. It's like an extra layer of being like looking hot, and then doing like having a great job, being a great wife, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But I think because if you're a man and you like wearing women's clothes, that's like a really nice fantasy. You don't have to deal with raising children.
Yeah, it is. You're right. The images that we're responding to are the same images you see when you open a magazine and on TV. They're idealised versions of women's lives. They're not looking after babies and washing the dishes. Yeah. So the language that transvestites pick up on, we work through all this sort of like Natasha's work, the wedding dress. We've got to have the wedding dress. We've got to have. It's all part of that fairy tale. We feel like we've missed out on the role of female, and we're sort of not pastiching it because we respect it and admire it, but it is imposed in the same way that masculinity is imposed. And your idea of what you should be as a man, women get far more of that, the expectations.
It's not a post-feminist view of female sexuality, is it? Is that what you're implying? It's not. It's an interesting. Transvesticism and transgender are different, aren't they? One's dressing up as a woman. Transgender is about feeling like you are something else, or you are something else, and that's you. Yes.
Transgender is the umbrella term, so it covers a lot of things, and transvestism being just one of them. It may mean that some people decide to go all the way and have have surgery. For a while I thought, is that going to be me in my life? But no, it's just the look, same look that you might like in a magazine. Thank you for the dress comment. £5 sale.
We talk about the work, the revisiting, obviously the fantastic metaphor of the work. I mean, I think the work's amazing. It's so strong.
Is Grace still there?
Hopefully.
Yeah, she is. Like I said.
Yeah, she is.
Should we wait for her again?
Is there? You mentioned that you're revisiting the landscape of your father's past. Is your father still alive, or is he
No, my
passed?
parents are both dead.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there any connection between him and you that you're exploring in the work? Because you mentioned that. You bring that as a
one of my
landscape.
last shoots, one of the sites I go back to, it's really hard to get in, got so much security on it. It's a huge site though. They dug a huge channel for laying a pipe in. And I knew my dad had done that sort of work. So I got down into that trench, beautiful sunny day, blue sky. And I never was that close to my dad, but at that moment I thought, this is the sort of place he worked in when he was a young man, and his life would have been in holes in the ground, digging with a pickaxe when he did it. But it's sort of a vivid connection of his life, and life's really short, and we're only here for a little while, and what decisions he made about his life, where he moved from to, it's just eye-opening to think of this fleeting thing we have, life, and we just live it either as who we want to be, or we'll get to the end of it and think, oh, okay, I live my life that way. I would have liked to do it that way, but it may be vividly aware that because my dad's dead, you don't have a choice. You only get a certain period. It might be 6 months, another 10 years, whatever. But the connection with his life, being in that working environment that he worked in, it's just so intense, really overwhelming.
Okay, great. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you
very much, Pete.